What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Salud Cabrones podcast. I am Danny Villegas.
And I am Javier Ledesma.
And before we get started, we ask that you like, comment, subscribe, and share the Salud Cabrones podcast on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and YouTube. And follow us on all social media platforms at Salud Cabrones podcast. Javier, we have a very special guest with us today.
This one, I am not going to argue with you, Danny.
You can't argue with me on this one.
Can't argue.
You can't.
It goes without saying, man.
Yes, absolutely. When you think of professional wrestling, his name is at the top of that list. He is, the most educated feet in professional wrestling for a reason.
No fucking doubt there's no reason. This guy's resume speaks for itself.
Absolutely. The professor, right? Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know by now, we're talking about the infamous Bobby Fish.
And the crowd goes wild. Bobby, thank you for being on the show. How are you today?
Thank you, gentlemen, for having me. And I'm doing great, man. I love coming to Chicago. Chicago has, all the way back to the Ring of Honor days, Chicago always treated us very well. And then through NXT, the Black and Gold, we had some great shows in Chicago. And now with MLW, we are keeping that streak going. So, happy to be in Chicago.
Yeah, you have an MLW show tomorrow night.
Yes, sir.
Where you will be taking on who again?
Kojima.
Yeah.
Japanese motherfucking legend.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about that, sir?
I'm going to punch him in his face.
Oof.
I love the man. He's a Japanese wrestling legend, but this is a world title contest. I get to be world champion. I take that title from him tomorrow. He's had a nice long run, so glad he enjoyed it. But the last couple shows we have really we've unleashed the Rogue Horsemen on MLW, and we are here to make an absolute mess of MLW. And it starts with Cozy, Mr. at Cozy Lariat himself, Kojima. So,
at this stage in your career, what does it mean for you to take on such a prolific name in pro wrestling like Kojima?
I think there's a little added extra something special for me because Pro Wrestling Noah was it's a Japanese company, and that was my first break in pro wrestling. Coming up doing this, when I started to work for Pro Wrestling Noah, that was the first time that I had an inkling of okay, I might be good enough at this to pay my bills with this. And so that was 8 years on and off that I worked for Pro Wrestling Noah. Well, not on and off. It was eight years solid, but there were years I did more tours than others. And then working for New Japan for a couple of years during the Ring of Honor run, especially with Kyle as Red Dragon. So I've really got a place in my heart for the Japanese wrestling audience, and then just Japanese wrestling in general. The Great Muta was such a big influence on my fandom. And then even the Dynamite Kid, these are, it all just, there's a lot of dots to connect going back to Japan for me.
Earlier, we were having conversations, a few of us, with yourself, and you were telling us how, the whole, the new school versus old school, teaching nowadays, what the new school is doing now compared to what the old school did before. Yep. You breaking into the business, how were you trained, and how do you see it differently now with the new school?
So I think that it was kind of my generation coming up that we heard a lot of people talking about, you do it in the ring. But nobody was doing it in the ring. So, and then you take yourself to TV wrestling, and I'm not a big fan of the inside baseball terminology. I think the business has been exposed a little too much already. So, I'll kind of tiptoe around some things here, but I do think that there's just high. Again, here comes the inside baseball. High spots are what they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
But they're not that in today's wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, I think there's a disconnect. And I think that when I look at the industry now, I think a lot of what's out there becomes homogenized, not on purpose. It's because you're trying to make it too perfect. This is a fight. If it looks perfect, well,
Right.
then you two are dancing.
I agree.
I didn't get into pro wrestling to dance. You know, like I've been an athlete since I was 8 years old, and I like contact. I like, you know, I'm not a masochist, but like, yeah, hit me. And I'm going to hit, because I'm sure as shit going to hit you. So, yeah, I think it's just different flavors, and I think the modern, you know, I'm
Like you said.
officially old if I sit here and say, well, back in my day. But
Like you said before, like, you know, you just put a high spot here and there. Where before, a high spot actually meant something.
Yeah.
Now a high spot is the open of the match.
yeah.
And the middle and the end and the in
Right.
between.
Well, and that's when I think too much of a good thing is exactly that. It's too much. And that goes off the rails, and it becomes what it becomes something that it was never intended to be. So there's no soul in high spot to high spot to high spot. There's got to be a portion in a contest where you're figuring it out.
Yeah.
You're putting it together in real time. And that can't be perfect. And if it's you and I out there doing it, like, you shouldn't know exactly where I'm going, and I shouldn't know exactly where you're going. And because then the other thing that we lose is there needs to be a little bit of contention there too. People feel that vibration is real. Like, fans feel it in a room. Like, I don't know if those two guys like each other. That's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
That's a great thing. And I think when we do it the way that it's being done sometimes today, we lose that element, and there's a visceral feeling in the building that's just not there that used to be, you know, back in the day of the, you know, Dusty Rhodes and Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson.
Based on that mindset, there is a particular match that I feel has become legendary, both for good and for bad reasons. We're talking about Ricochet versus Osprey. You're talking about the realism of pro wrestling being slightly taken out when things feel a little too choreographed. That match is amazing to watch because you're watching like a live action, like comic book come to life.
Sure.
But at the same time, there is not a whole lot of realism that comes with that match.
Right. So it's different flavors of ice cream, right? And I think that match, like, you cannot not appreciate the athleticism and the skill required for those two gentlemen to go out and do what they're doing. So in no way would I take anything away from either of them. Athletically, they're incredible. And then even as, like, I know them both as human beings, they're incredible. And as performers, they are downright incredible. I do think that match, with all the attention that it garnered, was a great thing for pro wrestling. It was a great thing for both performers. But I think some people, taken out of context, it's misinterpreted as for what it's supposed to be. And if a young guy or girl coming up is going to try to produce that, you're going the wrong way. And I'm not the person to say, like, oh, well, you got to work with your limitations and whatnot. But, like, let's face it. I mean, Ricochet and Will Osprey, like, come on, man. They are not coming down the street every day.
Right.
They're not human.
I was say they're not human. They're not human. Yeah.
Well, and I'll say this too: is I know Trevor and Will, and they've both grown as performers over the years. And dare I say, like, I don't know that they would have that match right now, because I wrestled Will just a couple years ago and in Progress, and like Will added stuff to what he does from when I had last wrestled him in New Japan, obviously, because it was quite a bit of time had passed, but Will has added some grit to what he does, and some, like the hidden blade, and so he's got more like just in your face, like, F you than he had then. And that was an element that he needed to add. And I'm so happy to see that he did add it. And it was an absolute pleasure to mix it up with him all these years later. And he, man, I mean, he's just gotten better. And same thing can be said about Trevor.
I feel like you get more out of grit than you do out of a high fly spot.
I think so too. But when you're capable of those amazing athletic things, though, it's hard not to rely on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not everybody can do it.
Right. But like you said, if you're doing it beginning, middle, and end, then after a while, that shock factor is gone, because you expect it.
Yes.
Where, like you said, if you put one or two in a match, then it's like, oh shit, wow.
Yeah.
But if you're doing that boom, 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 and it's like, okay,
yeah,
I've seen it already. The last few moves you did it, so you're unimpressed after that.
Yeah, I think it kind of what I just thought of was something. It was from like Spider-Man with great power comes great responsibility, or something like that. Like the same thing could be said with them. Like God graced both of those men with an athleticism that's just unparalleled,
unhuman, like Javier said.
Right.
Yeah.
And with that comes great responsibility, in that, like, okay, you overuse it, and maybe that match represents them overusing it. And then as they mature in their growth as performers, they realize, like, oh, okay, I can be a bit more judicious with this. And this is this great gift that I have, but I don't need for that to be the only thing. And so I think that both of them would probably say something similar, that like I've learned to use it better. To use it better.
Yeah. Not to mention that it'll probably prolong their career to take a step back, like a Rey Mysterio.
Probably.
Like he when he was smaller, he was doing those things at such a high level, and then he ended up in WWE, and you could totally tell he slowed down his style, put on a little bit more muscle, and we're still seeing him to this day. I don't think we would probably see him now had his style remained the same.
I would agree with that. I think Ray's a great example of that, and he had to, and it was out of necessity, and in the early days when he was coming up, with the size difference being so drastic, he had to do that, right?
I agree.
But once he became Rey Mysterio, and he had that name value and that cachet builds up, he's got the equity. So now, not to say like, oh, well, now you coast. No, now you don't have to have the shock factor, because you don't need it anymore.
Right.
People are coming. They bought the ticket to see you.
Yep.
Like, they're coming to see what you're going to give them. So now give them not the same thing every time.
What kind of advice are you giving the younger talent breaking into the business now? Or I'm sure, all the shows you're doing, I'm sure you get a lot of kids going up to you saying, what advice can you give me, for, to make it in the business or prolong my career?
Run. Get out of it. Like, get as far away.
You're in the wrong business, kid. Get out.
Go be a lawyer.
Is that what Harley told you?
I don't remember.
Guys,
whatever it was.
I will spit out my beer on that one.
I wish you would have.
I wish he would have. What nuggets of wisdom did Harley give you?
Harley was big on making everything mean something. I think what I'll say, this is, I can kind of fit these together. One of the things that I preach to them now is why? Why did you do that? We can do so many different things, but tell me why. If you can explain to me why, then like there's some credibility as to what you did. If you did it just because you can do it, then I got some questions. And that was something that not only Harley was big on, but Tony DeVito, who was the man who originally trained me, Tony was big on that too. Still is to this day. Like, why? Why do it? And if you can't give a good why, then, I agree. Like, I don't think you should do it. Mm-hmm. If it's just, because I can, then you're shortchanging the audience. You're not telling a story. You're doing a move, and it's a move that they can't relate to. So, like, if you're a big guy and you can throw a great drop kick, and then we're going to wrestle a match, and in that match, you punch me, and I fall down, get back up. You punch me again, I fall down, get back up. Punch me again, fall down, get back up. And then at some point in that match, you're going to hit me with that drop kick to let these fans know that even though you're 6'4" and 280, you can throw a hell of a drop kick. Okay, great. And you're probably going to get a reaction from them. Mm-hmm. However, we've been irresponsible with your ability to do it. Because if you can stand on your 2 feet and hit me and take me off of my 2 feet, why would you leave your 2 feet to knock me, to do the same thing that you were just doing without leaving your feet? It makes no sense. Mm-hmm. But then you take 2 guys that are both 6'4" and 280, and they're punching each other, and nobody's hitting the mat. Nobody's back is hitting the mat. And then one guy gets into this and then something else, and then you pull that drop kick out. Boom. His back hits the mat. Okay, now we've done something with it. Now you've given me something to follow, and you've given me a reason to care. Mm-hmm. That, to me, is the art of pro wrestling.
I agree. That's storytelling 101 there. Mm-hmm. When you broke into the business, we had this conversation earlier. You talked about your different names, your different gimmicks. I'm a big fan of the evolution of characters. So walk us through Jerkin Jackson and Madden Fish.
Not Jerkin Jackson, although Tony DeVito right now is somewhere smiling because... So here's the story with that. I was on my way to training, and Jack Johnson was on the radio. And then I got there to training that day, and unbeknownst to me, Tony felt like I was ready to go out and have my first match. And then they were talking about sending me the following weekend to go out with one of the guys into Syracuse and do this match. And they were like, well, you need to have a name. Are you going to be Bobby Fish? And I was like, oh, God, no. I would never. I can't. So my best offering was like, maybe like Bobby Morgan's or something, which is obviously
sounds
awful.
Like an alcohol drink.
Yeah.
Give me a Bobby Morgan.
Yeah. There you go. Get a double shot of Bobby Morgan, please.
Exactly. A Bobby Morgan and Coke. And so they were like, well, what are you going to be? You're not going to be Bobby Fish. You got to be something. I was like, I don't know. Maybe I'll be Jerk Jackson or something. And Tony was like, yeah, you're going to be. But then Tony wanted it to be Jerk Johnson. And then he went into this whole, like, down this rabbit hole of, like, porno magazines. And I was like,
I had that.
We can't.
I had that thought in my head, but I didn't want to say it out loud.
Yeah.
What it
You guys
sounded
hear
like.
giggling in the background?
Nobody.
That's the peanut gallery going over there.
There's no life to that. But anyway, it became Jerk Jackson, and I was Jerk Jackson for, I think, the better part of like 2 to 3 years, if not a little bit longer, because it wasn't until I started working for Noah, Pro Wrestling Noah, where they knew me as Bobby Fish, because I got hooked up with Pro Wrestling Noah through Harley Race. So it was a Harley Race camp. and they knew me as Bobby Fish, and they weren't, keen to like gimmick names. And so that was when I started going by Bobby Fish. And
So who was Jerk Jackson?
Jerk Jackson was just this dude with long hair. I had long hair, like long hair, like the middle of my back, which was cool when it was wet. When it was wet, it was like, yeah, dude looks like a rocker, or at least I thought it looked cool. But by the end of the match, once it dried, it was like a fro.
Sponge up, huh?
Yeah, it was like I would turn my head and then my hair would.
So as you're finding yourself and you're adding bits and pieces to the character and you're starting to abandon Jerk Jackson, how do we eventually find the Bobby Fish that we know of today?
It went through a bunch of like facelifts, and there was a time where I was just throwing things against the wall to see what would stick. I leaned on the Japanese experience that I had, and I tried to go with this thing called the Round Eye Samurai at one point. And I had a lot of
You told us that earlier today.
A lot of tough ones.
I'm gonna remember that one for a long time.
I had some cringy stuff there. I think it really came together. I knew that I wanted my martial arts to be not a part of my pro wrestling, but the part of my pro wrestling. And Gabe Sapolsky had booked Kyle O'Reilly and I versus each other in Evolve. It was actually the first match for Evolve ever. And unbeknownst to me at the time, like Kyle would play such a big role in my career later, but I think it was that time frame where I really started getting comfortable with infusing my pro wrestling with my martial arts. And then by the time Kyle and I came together as Red Dragon, and that was Delirious put us together as a team, and we had instant chemistry. And Kyle and I had known each other, but did not know that we were, the two peas in a pod that we would become. I really feel like for him and for myself, Red Dragon was the vehicle that like brought us into what we both are today.
Launched you guys.
What we were in even the Undisputed Era and all that stuff. I really feel like Red Dragon was what got us there.
You guys ended up being Tag Team of the Year in 2019. What did that mean for you guys? Did it validate the fact that Delirious put you guys together, and now you guys you knew you had that chemistry? 2019 come around, and you guys are at the top of the mountain. At the point, I remember watching you guys. I didn't think you guys were untouchable as a tag team. I thought that you guys put on these matches that were just second to none.
I appreciate that. I mean, I think Kyle and I we knew that we were similar, but we were different in some ways as well, where like I definitely led with more of a striking Muay Thai base, and Kyle was more the jiu-jitsu guy. And it really allowed for us to be the same, but to be different. And I think that was one of the things that helped us quite a bit. And then also, Delirious, as good of a booker as he was, we were going to be the catalyst for why Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards came back together as the American Wolves, which was a huge, one of the best tag teams in Ring of Honor history. And we got to be the antagonists. We got to really become heels.
Yeah.
In the sense that like everything we did, and Kyle and I brainstormed on all of this, even to the name Red Dragon and all of it. There was a why behind everything. We were Red Dragon, and because we were going to be heels, we were just trying to make people not like us. And they weren't going to like us because we were going to be opposite Davey and Eddie anyway. But let's like just multiply that as much as we can. So in the beginning, we purposely got gear made that was not red. because we were Red Dragon, and we wanted people to be like, okay, why are they Red Dragon? Like, we had a symbol that was red and black, but it was this tiny, small thing on our gear. Purposely, we just wanted to get under people's skin. And what I realized was that, like, I have this, like, talent for, and in the beginning, Kyle was a little bit more quiet, and then as Kyle started to, like, get comfortable, this side of him, this quirky side came out of him that was just, it's just money. But for me, right from jump, just getting under people's skin was, I'm good at it.
Is that why I couldn't read the name Red Dragon? Because there's like 2 capital letters in the middle. I was like, what the fuck?
That was another thing to A, piss people off, and then B, we never confirmed it for anyone, but DR, so Davey Richards was Kyle's.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Kyle was breaking away from Davey, and we were focusing on beating the shit out of Davey. So Davey needed help. So that's where him and Eddie came back together. And there's a D and there's an R. And so we just.
Newsflash, people. Bam!
Well, and it was like, let them draw their conclusion.
Right.
That's awesome.
And some people did and some people didn't. And it was just, that was what made Red Dragon so much fun. It was just Kyle and I just getting to be ourselves and learning how to, like, take what was already there from us as people and really turn the volume up on it and just make people angry.
So when can we see Red Dragon again?
Everyone wants to know.
Inquiring minds want to know.
It's a good question. Kyle right now works for AEW, and they took very good care of him. Kyle had his neck surgery, which, man, I'm going to say that was probably a decade overdue. Tony Khan, to his credit, to AEW's credit, like, they stood by Kyle. They took care of Kyle. So I got nothing but love for them in that way. Me wrestling there again, it doesn't seem to be in the cards right now, but I never say never. I'm not opposed to. I would love to wrestle alongside Kyle again. It's definitely before I hang it up. But you never know. But you also, in this industry, you never say never.
Exactly.
So we'll see what happens.
Right now, you said before you hang it up. How much longer do you see yourself doing this for?
I think if I do it another 30 years, that'll put me at 78. I think that's a good time.
I mean, Flair's doing it. I mean, why not?
No, I don't know. I really don't have like a timeline on it. I think for me, there were years ago where it was like, man, I don't want to be doing this at 50, but 50 is only 2 years away now. So, and this is still the best way for me to pay my wife and I's bills. So, I don't know. I'm kind of playing that by ear.
But when you do call it quits, can you see yourself staying in the business more like a mentor role or backstage role?
So recently I've gotten into coaching. I coach at the Dark Arts in Plant City, which is Malachi Black's school. Yeah. But unfortunately, I live in Ormond Beach, which is a couple hours from Tampa. So I can't be there that often. And I also coach at House of Champions, which is in Longwood, Florida, which is a suburb of Orlando, which is a little bit closer. It's like an hour. Mm-hmm. So I coach both there, both of those places. And what I discovered was, like, I do have something to give back. I do love it. I like passing it on. I think for me, I played football in college, and then to complete my degree, I had to go back for classes. So I coached for a year, and what I realized was, I love playing football. Mm-hmm. So I thought that it would be the same with pro wrestling, and much to my surprise, I actually it's not. And I love coaching. I love giving back. I feel like, you're around your peers so much doing this that everybody kind of knows the same stuff. Y'all know the same shit.
Right.
But then you get around people that are on the come up and you realize like, oh man, there's stuff that's not being passed on that should be passed on, and there's ways that I can help. And let's face it, like I have been fortunate enough to be under the learning tree of people like Fit Finley and William Regal and Terry Taylor and Triple H and Shawn Michaels. And these are people like, how dare I bogart the stuff that they passed on to me? Like I need to be passing this on to the next generation. And unfortunately, because there is, there's a lot of bad training out there.
Yeah.
Some of this stuff is missing people that need it. So,
I
I would 100% be all about that.
You just gave a great list of gentlemen that you just learned under.
Yeah.
What is one sound advice that one of them gave you that sticks to you to this day?
Preferably Papa Trips, because I really want to hear about Papa Trips.
Well, I got a story. About Papa Trips.
I love that you just call him that.
Which I was pretty positive that the man knew what he was doing in wrestling context to begin with. But this instance, it's actually my favorite match from run in WWE. It was AOP versus Kyle and I. We did it in Philadelphia at a pay-per-view. And for me, being such a fan of NWA, the like Crockett years, that was Kyle and I's opportunity to be the Brainbusters, to be Tully and Arn, wrestling the Road Warriors. So much so that you got Paul Ellering on the floor in both. And that being the case, we had ideas for our match, and the finish was one of the big parts of it, and the match kind of worked backwards from there, and we were really excited about it. And then day of, somebody else, like finish had to change, and it was like, oh no. Like it ruined it. I was really butthurt over it. It was like, it ruins everything. And Hunter stepped in and was just, he had an idea for the finish. And the finish that we ended up doing was so simple. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was something along the lines of a roll-up.
Okay.
And honestly, it ended up making the match. And he was so calm and confident in the way that he helped us figure this out that, like, I just think he knew the whole time, like, that's what this match needs. And again, that's just, it's a credit to the man. Just knows pro wrestling, and there's a reason why he's the most influential person in the industry right now.
Oh yeah,
and there's a reason.
Since we're on the Triple H conversation, I love hearing people that have been signed about when the moment that their life changed, when that phone call came. Like, where were you? What were your thoughts? So walk me through the moment that you finally got that call from WWE.
It kind of happened in like steps, because the original interest in me was as a coach, was not as a performer. Kyle and Adam were probably headed to NXT. NXT had become like the place to be at that point. Kevin and Sammy were there, and then Finn. I think Finn coming over from New Japan was, that was the thing that nobody ever saw happening. And so when the interest was there for Kyle and Adam, and then I got contacted about being a coach, I just wasn't ready to hang it up, And I thought, like, okay, I would like to be a coach someday, but I'm not there yet. There's tread left on the tires. So it wasn't really an option. And then the more conversation was there, the more it started to become an option. And then have some private thoughts as to who got involved in the conversations, which started to steer it in the direction to me performing more, but not really needed to cover that. But it started to change a little bit, and then they were more open to me performing, and then I went in and I worked Aleister Black. Then Kyle worked Aleister Black, and then there were things just starting to kind of come together. And then I'd say the moment that you're fishing for, no pun intended, happened in the Performance Center weight room. Kyle and I were there. I don't believe Adam was there yet. And Hunter had asked us what we would want to do if we were, to sign there, and how we would want to come in. And I think Kyle and I thought, like, well, we'll come in as a tag team. We'd like to be a Red Dragon. And he beat us to the punch and said, like, well, what do you guys think about you two together with Adam? And we just looked at each other like, okay, this is a joke.
Right.
Like, somebody's going to come out of the back and be like, we're just fucking with you. We would never put you guys together. And so the three of us being as good of friends as we were, and we knew we were coming into, if we were going to go there, like Roddy was already there, and he wasn't going to be part of our team, but we were going to be on the road. We'd be the three of us, and yeah, it was like that was the moment that it was like, wait a second, this is actually happening. And then we started to do the Undisputed Era stuff, and it started to work and go well, and it was it was just at every turn I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it never did. And then when I tore my ACL, they brought the idea was to bring Roddy in, and there was literally nobody else on the roster that would have fit. Like, nobody. And I just, I'm a Christian, and I think everything happens on his timeline. And I think there was some divine intervention as far as like making us a quartet instead of a trio. And I think it happened at the right time, and it turned the Undisputed Era into something different, but something just as cool. And then when I came back from injury, now there was four of us, and again it evolved into something else. So it kept freshening up what was already going well. So yeah, I mean, I think we really just happened to hit a good window of time in the industry.
Bobby, I have a surprise for you. There is a certain lady here sitting in the crowd that wants to join the show, and she's going to be our fellow co-host today. She wants to ask a few questions. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, if you guys can please put your hands together for Chicago's sweetheart, Miss Kate.
Let me get through. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry.
Oh, here she comes.
Hello.
Hey, Misa, what's up?
Make sure I don't knock anything over. Hey, what's going on, guys?
How are you? Thank you for
Welcome to
joining
the
us
show.
again.
Oh, wow.
Welcome back to the show, Misa. You wanted to hang out here with us, and you're a completely different side. And this one, you're going to be our co-host. So,
No pressure.
the Salud Cabrones podcast welcomes its third member, Misa Kate. So, what kind of questions do you have in mind for the professor himself? Put you on the spot there.
Right? You could at least, start a... No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean, luckily Bobby and I were speaking a little bit earlier. I was trying to pick your brain a little bit. You were answering some of my questions that I would have had. Thanks, guys. But yeah, so I guess just to reiterate a conversation that we were having earlier. Sorry. I'm 6 years in. So what is some advice that you could give somebody who's been 6 years in and just trying to, I guess, find her way through pro wrestling, trying to find character and just overall? I know it's a very broad question.
No, broad's fine. I think probably the most important aspect would be to understand and trust that it's a process, and like trust the process itself, because there's going to be, it'd be great if we could just go, okay, well, I'm going to pick the good stuff and we'll leave, but that's not a process, right? The process is, it's the good and the bad, and some of the bad is on the other side of that is where the most growth comes from. So you got to be here for all of it, and then I think that's where you start to have faith in the fact that, like, yes, it is a process, and there's going to be highs and lows, peaks and valleys, and I mean that's kind of a microcosm for the industry as a whole. As you go through your career. For me at this point, like 25 years, I can think of, a lot of highs and lows. And there were definitely times where it was like, okay, why am I doing this? Like, what? I remember spending 26 hours in transit coming home from the UK the first time.
26 hours,
26
damn.
hours.
A whole day.
Between a bus, a train, and flights, and sleeping in O'Hare. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, more than once during that 26 hours, like, what am I doing with my life? And then there's like the war games, there's highs and lows, and it's just kind of what it is. You got to be here for all of it.
Right now that you mentioned war games, what is the greatest moments you remember about war games, or
I really the second war games that we did was probably my favorite, and I think that's because it was still very new, but we had one under our belt. So we kind of had an idea of how to put this thing together, and then we really got to be very creative with it in that second one. And Roddy was on our team at that point, as opposed to against us. Like in the first one, he was with AOP. So having Roddy and being the four of us, it really felt like I don't know. People can have different theories on it, but I felt like, okay, if we're going into the war games, and I know like Triple H and Shawn were big fans of the same stuff I was a big fan of, like the NWA, the Crockett years. Jokingly, I would call us Hunter's Horsemen sometimes, because it felt like that was kind of what we were.
You just put a huge smile on my face. I'm not gonna lie. Small part of me just marked out really, really, really fast.
And for the war games to be reintroduced to a new generation, and for us to be synonymous with those, for us to be the four guys that were in every one of those coming back, it's like it's a charmed life that I got to live. Career could end tomorrow, and it would still that's some pretty unreal stuff.
Adam would probably be the Flair. Who are you in those four horsemen?
I think I'm Arn.
Yeah,
I can see that. I could definitely see that.
So Misa's here, and she says she has been 6 years in. What does Bobby Fish now have a conversation with Bobby Six when he was 6 years into the business?
Run.
That seems to be like your advice for everything.
Yeah.
All right, get out of here, kid.
Run.
Not wrong. I understand.
Run, Mr.
Misa's like,
Run.
I've been telling myself to run this time.
Yeah.
I don't listen. Yeah.
6 years in, I would say.
Actually, time out. Who were you at the 6 in? Were you weren't Jerk Jackson at the time? Were you Madden Fisher yet, or were you Round Eye at that time?
I think Madden Fisher only lasted like less than a year. So I think 6 years. Well, 6 years in, no, I was definitely Bobby Fish, because at that point I was in Noah.
Okay.
So, yeah, I would tell him, be patient. Like, just all the way around, be patient. Because I remember I had no patience when it came to trying to get my martial arts in there. And I look back at some of those. If I were to look back, because I don't watch them, I don't even know where you would find them at this point. But like some of the Noah stuff, you know, the martial arts I was putting in there was not good, and it wasn't because I didn't know martial arts. But hindsight's always 20/20, and if there was a kid 6 years in right now who came to House of Champions or the Dark Arts, I would warn them that, like, make sure your pro wrestling fundamentals, let's get them like top notch before we start trying to add in the martial arts, because it's a transition. And there's things that, you know, there's legitimate martial arts technique that I can take from my martial arts and put it right in pro wrestling, and it fits perfect. And then there's other stuff that's just, it needs to be tailored to what we do. And that again is another process, and it's whittling down at times to figure it out. So.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Just to touch on that, so just brief background. When I first started wrestling, I kind of got thrown in quickly. I don't know if it was the same for you, especially being a female. I feel like they throw us in a lot quicker because they're like, oh, we got a girl on the roster. I originally hid from my 4-month debut. They tried making me debut. I was like, nah, I'm okay. I hid, and then I debuted at between 6 to 7 months of training. So that being said, I always kind of felt like I have to play catch up, and I would have to learn, I guess, on the fly. But then it's like, but you're not learning correctly, so now it's like you have to backtrack, and then you have to go this direction. So I guess, when you first started training, was it a similar situation? Was it completely different? Because I've heard all different, I guess, perspectives on it.
When I first started training, it's hard for me to take myself back to that place. I was so clueless, and all I had to lean on was just being an athlete and coming from, playing football in college and just always having that regimented, like, okay, this is what you do and how you get better. I was really figuring it out as I went, and I look back now and I realize how big a part Pro Wrestling Noah was in me learning, because one, I was doing it more often, because when I would go over for a tour there, I was wrestling 4, 5, 6 days a week, and when I was home doing indies in the States, I was wrestling like a couple times a month. So the learning curve definitely increased for me when I started working for Noah. But I'm also working in Japan, where there's a language barrier, and at that time I probably would have told you, like, oh well, I kind of don't love wrestling in Japan because I can't really put things together the way I can in the States. But looking back, that's what was actually, like, that's stuff that I lean on more now than I would putting stuff together.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, how do you communicate with someone with the language barrier? Like, you wrestle in Japan, obviously there's that big language barrier. How do you get through a match like that?
You get there. Yeah, I mean, there's a level of there's a rhythm to what we do, and there's a lot more going on in that ring than people realize. Mm-hmm. And I know now, myself coaching, I see a lot of people come in, and the misperception as far as, like, well, it's predetermined, or it's the dirty word, it's fake.
Oh, I hate that.
I can do it.
Yeah,
I can do it.
Yeah.
And you see people come in off the street, and it's like, man, there's so much more going on in that ring than people realize, and I think the infuriating part is it's like some people are just not willing to admit there's more going on, but there really, really, really is, and when it's done at the highest level, there's so much more going on than people realize. So, unbeknownst to me, a lot of what I was picking up with the language barrier is what would benefit me the most going forward, as opposed to when I would come home and work in the States with people that spoke the same language. We were trying to make it too perfect. And when I was working for Noah, I couldn't make it perfect because we didn't speak the same language, you know. And good luck, even if there was a little bit of English that they spoke, and like I picked up a little bit of Japanese along the way, but, you know, good luck communicating in a live arena, you know, lights and all that stuff with broken English and broken Japanese. Like, yeah, good luck. So
You mentioned your martial arts. Most educated feet. That is no joke, and that's legit. So you have been an amateur kickboxer. Now you've had a boxing fight, and you've done some MMA.
yeah.
You are a dangerous fucking human being, sir.
Well, I'm 48 now, so
You're
I don't
dangerous
know.
10 years ago,
maybe
right?
yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Javier was talking a lot of shit about you before. Feel free to do what you want. Just let me know so I can pull up my phone and record it.
I think I've always considered myself somebody who could handle himself, but you know, at the end of the day, like I'm not Anderson Silva either. But I think pro wrestling, again, the misperception is that none of us can go because it's not what we do as a career. And after 25 years in the industry, my assessment is that, yeah, there's a lot of people in this industry who can't go.
I was curious.
There's no way around it. But there are those others that can. And so, you know, it just, you can't paint with such a broad brush to be like, okay, well, all pro wrestler. Like, I mean, dare I say, and I worked with both of his sons in New Japan, but the stories about Haku.
Ooh, yeah. Man.
So,
yes.
you know, please save your, pro wrestlers can't fight.
Just curious, has anybody ever shot on you in the ring and they,
As
they say, as they say, fuck around and found out?
So kind of.
Please say
yes.
it was Kyle O'Reilly.
Kind of yes, kind of no. So nobody's ever it's never broken down to that really. I will say this, and I'll go back to so it was in AEW, and this is going to be a bit of a bombshell here.
Ooh, I love that shit.
So FTR and us,
leaning on this
and Kyle and I, and we got into some stuff, and like FTR works a very snug style as well, and we had a great match in NXT with them because I think we complement each other because we are all four of us are willing to go there. And tempers got a little bit flared up with a segment that we did with them, and Dax and I got into it a bit. And it was not an in-ring segment. It was like up on the runway and whatever, and things got, tempers flared. I personally think that that's good for business. And I think the FTR guys would probably agree. But eventually we got to the back, and there were, he and I were not looking to send each other, Christmas cards that year. But by the end of the evening before we left, we were both able to shake hands and wish each other well. And, that's just being a professional.
Yeah.
Tempers are going to flare, and there is testosterone, and that's a good thing. That needs to be there. Personally, I felt like, let's put it on TV. Like, I think fans probably recognized it. Like, hey, there's a little something extra to this. Like, let's make some money on it. That's what they used to do back in the day. I mean,
agree.
that's what it's supposed to be. And trust that your performers, this is where you need to put trust in your performers, that they are professional enough to always do business. Because at the end of the day, I will stand on the fact that, like, yes, I am going to do business, and I would say the same thing for Dax. He would have done business.
I mean, look at Sean and Brett. Everyone knew they hated each other. We had Edge and Matt Hardy, and you can cut the tension with a knife. Those matches made you, like Danny said, lean in earlier. Like, you wanted to see that because you knew there was a sense of realism to that.
Yeah, and that was the thing, is like Dax and I had no personal issue with each other. We just, in the moment, got a little carried away.
Yeah, right, of course.
You know, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's what testosterone does to people. Sorry. But I mean, that's when there's a little bit too much testosterone in the room, and that's all right. That's not bad. That's good.
So I mentioned that you were a dangerous human being. So you had a fight in Dubai.
I did.
Boxing fight. It was completely outside of your wheelhouse because you're a kickboxer.
Yes.
And that all kind of fell on your lap. Can you walk us through what happened there?
I was off. I was, for the first time in I don't know how many years, but a while. I was no longer under a TV contract, so I didn't have to talk to anybody to get permission to do something like that. And I got a phone call from it was people within wrestling from the UK, and they had somebody from Dubai that wanted to, and then to see if I was interested in a fight on the Floyd Mayweather undercard, where he was going to fight this influencer Deji. And I was like, okay, well, first off, I don't even know if this is real, but spoke with Trent Seven, and then got Andy Shepard's number. Andy I knew from working in WWE. He was one of the UK correspondents. Talked to Andy, ended up getting on the phone with some people from Dubai, and they put this thing together, and they wanted to have me come over and fight. And I was like, okay, boxing is not necessarily my go-to, but it's Floyd Mayweather. Like, I just don't see myself being on my deathbed at 80 and being like, man, I really should not have done that Floyd Mayweather thing.
At 80, you're probably retiring from wrestling at that time.
I'm thinking 70.
Yeah, just retired from wrestling.
Yeah.
One of my favorite stories leading to that was that you were talking to your trainer about that you were worried that you were going to kick the guy during your boxing, that you were like so used to the idea of like throwing kicks.
Well, we talked about it a lot because my trainer was my trainer in Muay Thai. And I had kicked around the idea in the beginning of like, okay, well, I need to get a boxing trainer. And then the more I talked to Coach Alec about it, it was like, what am I doing? Like, I don't want to look over in the corner and see a guy that like I barely know who's like, I can like jab is a jab and a cross is a cross. Like, I'm going with, home team. Like, and the people that set it up in Dubai, they were willing to fly over my agent, one coach, and my wife. So it was like, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to fly over some guy I just met. So Coach Alec came over with me. And yeah, that was something that we had to, it's striking, right? So it's all similar, but there's different nuance to it, and a Muay Thai stance is way more upright, and your legs can't be quite as wide because you're going to get your legs torn up with leg kicks. Where in boxing you have a much wider stance because nobody is leg kicking you, right. And there's just the differences of those things, and my default at that time is definitely within Muay Thai. So for 10 weeks, we had to train to get some of that involuntary muscle memory kind of out of me, so that kind of thing didn't happen.
That would have been hilarious. Like, oh, my bad, bro.
Sorry
to break your leg.
As we start winding down here, Bobby, Miss, any other questions you have for Mr. Bobby Fish?
Probably, but we'll talk
It'll come up
later.
to you.
Yeah. I'll let you- yeah,
Danny, I
let's-
got one.
What you got?
Bobby,
Oh my God.
I cannot finish this interview without asking you about one of your most recognizable traits. Yeah, I like the because you know where I'm going with this. When I first saw Bobby Fish wrestle, I left a Ring of Honor show going like, I fucking love that man's fucking mustache. I walked out of there and I did not remember the main event. I just remembered you looked like a fucking villain from a black and white movie.
He was like,
Yeah.
Dreamweaver.
Did you go?
I
Shave everything but your
wish.
mustache.
I just thought I'm like, that's the kind of guy that just looks like a villain, that looks like he's gonna tie someone up to a train track, and I just loved it. So, at what point in time did the facial hair become part of the gimmick?
It was kind of a process and definitely an evolution. The first tour I did for Noah, I happened to have a beard at the time, and so I kept it. And I was not really a bearded person up to that point. But then I started sticking with the beard, and then as time went on, when I went back to Ring of Honor, and I was actually like getting a job there. I would say that like Conor McGregor was a bit of an influence on me. I was a big fan of his, and at the time he was doing the suits, and so I started doing a very similar thing with like dressing the part, looking the part. The twirl of the mustache started to become, and that was kind of an evolution in itself. And then when I started doing the throat slash with the mouthpiece, which was something I had already been doing, the mouthpiece was something I had already been doing. It just all kind of came together, and it was all like very focused on my mouth. And it started to get traction, and it started to become a thing that people were into. And then I noticed like Kyle and I would come out, and I would do the slash to the camera and show my the teeth on my mouthpiece, and people were mimicking it. And it just made more sense to like, okay, I need to accentuate this even more. And little did I know that this would become like my signature.
The calling card.
Yeah, I mean, because when I was a kid, I was always clean shaven. My dad was a fireman, so like I never had a beard or a mustache or anything. And if somebody had said to me years ago, like on the come up, hey, you're gonna end up in WWE, but it's not gonna happen until you're 42 years old, I'd have been like, okay, you're crazy. And then if somebody said you're gonna like have your most successful run in your career with this, like, cartoon twirl mustache where you tie the damsel in distress up to the train track, like I'd have been like, okay, yeah, now you're really smoking.
It's like, are you sure this isn't the 90s?
I mean, that's what happened, and none of it was. I'd say none of it was by accident, but none of it was like plotted out either. And that's why I say now to people coming up, like, trust the process, because I didn't have it set out that like, okay, I'm going to twirl the mustache and I'm going to do this and this is how it's going to work. You don't know, but you put one foot in front of the other. You don't know step number 2 when you take step 1, and that's just, you got to get comfortable with that being the normal. Mm-hmm. You're going to figure out step 2 as you complete step 1. And then just keep moving forward.
I fucking love that shit.
Well, Bobby, we want to say thank you, sir. Thank you for hanging out with us tonight, man. Thank you. We hope you had a good time here with us.
I did.
Man, thank you.
Yeah, much appreciated.
Thanks for letting me
to our
intrude.
our cameo host, Mr. Kate.
This
Thank
is
you.
the second host we've ever had.
Yeah.
Like second special host.
And
How do you feel about being one of the boys right now? And not a wrestling
like I
boys,
got-
but you're one of the
I
podcast
got
boys
that
now.
testosterone
there
that you guys
you
were
go.
talking about earlier.
There you go. Right? That's what I'm talking about. And last things you want to say, Missy?
No, just thanks for letting me intrude, I guess, pretty much.
She muscles her way in here.
I know.
Damn right. Chicago sweetheart.
Yeah,
That's
there
how
you
we
go.
do it.
Hey,
Yeah.
Misa, how's Misa's bitches coming along?
It's in the works. It
It's in the
actually
works?
happened at a
Works?
show, and we'll talk.
All
There's
right.
certain things. See, and that's the thing. Like, there's certain things
See?
I'm like, I don't want to.
You're
It-
putting
it
one
can-
step
Yes.
next to the other, just like Bobby
Yeah,
said.
exactly.
There you go.
You're
Trusting the
having
process,
you're
yeah.
trusting the process.
But you guys will get the first merchandise.
I was about to say we better get the first T-shirt.
We'll fill you in. You
Yes.
missed a really fun episode.
Yes. Bobby's like, I don't know what the fuck I just walked into right
Bobby's
now.
like, get me out of this podcast.
Bobby,
She was quiet this whole time, then she just started barking out of nowhere.
Bobby, thank you again, sir. We appreciate you coming along, man. Thank you.
Appreciate you guys having me, man.
Yes,
Really.
thank you. Before we head up out of here, any last things you want to say?
No. If you're looking to get trained to wrestle, and you're in the Florida area, if you're near Tampa, the Dark Arts, great place to come get yourself trained to do what it is that we do. And if you're closer to Orlando, the House of Champions, I cannot speak highly enough about both of these places, and I coach at both. So come get some knowledge dropped on your dome by the most educated feet in professional wrestling.
Kicked on your dome if you don't get it.
That's right. Yeah. There you go.
Exactly.
Well, Bobby, again, thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us. Missa, thank you again for coming and helping us out today.
That was such a great help.
No, we want to give special thanks to Mr. Bobby Fish for hanging out with us tonight. Thank you to Missa Kate for joining us. Big thank you to the homie Chris Marquez, You Fitness. We are coming to you today from You Fitness, ladies and gentlemen. So big thank you to him for the love and the hospitality. We really appreciate you, Chris.
Great facility.
Yes, it really is, right?
Facility.
Yes, for those, 1748 North Kimball in Chicago. Ladies and gentlemen, come check him out, man. I'm telling you, you guys would love it here. And big thank you to our sponsors, the Law Office of Christopher Hoff and the Taco Villa in Villa Park. Missa, you already know the sign off. If you don't, you better know.
You've
Bobby,
been around.
this is the part of the podcast where we sign off and we raise up our beverages and we give a toast saying "Salud, cabrones." And I know you know how to say it because I saw the video you posted. I know you know how to say it because you said it
You
pretty
guys
good.
have the accent when you say it.
We were born with it.
Right. So I'm gonna try salud, cabron.
There, man. Oh, wait.
How would you say that in Japanese? I'm
not fluent.
I don't know, dude. For a second, I thought you were one of my Mexican uncles. But no. Again, thank you to everyone tonight. Bobby, Missa, we raise up our cups and we say 1, 2, 3. Salud, cabrones. We out.